Welcome to the Occult Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Carter, and in today's episode, we confront an ancient threshold whispered about in shadows. Samhain, later reshaped into Halloween, has long been more than costumes and candles. It was said to be the night when the veil between worlds thins, when the living and the dead stand side by side. Could this hidden calendar of the dead still mark unseen forces shaping our world, or have we forgotten the doorway entirely? In the ancient Celtic world, the passage of time was not measured solely by harvests and seasons, but by sacred thresholds. Among these, none was more powerful or more feared than Samhain. Emerging thousands of years ago across the mist-covered hills of Ireland and Scotland, Samhain marked the transition from light into darkness, from summer into winter. To the people who lived close to the land, it was not merely a festival, but a spiritual reckoning. The year was divided into two halves, and Samhain, falling on the final day of October, was the hinge upon which life and death turned. The Celts believed that during this liminal period, the world of the living and the world of the dead grew close enough to touch. Spirits, both benevolent and malevolent, could cross freely. The ancestors of each clan were honoured with offerings of food and drink, while wandering souls and darker beings were warded off with fires, charms, and disguises. Bonfires blazed upon hilltops, their smoke believed to purify and protect. Livestock were led through the flames in ritual acts of blessing. Communities gathered in circles, performing rites that balanced reverence and fear. To understand the weight of Samhain, we must also understand the worldview of those who first observed it. Life was fragile and death was near. Winter meant hunger, sickness, and the loss of those too weak to endure the cold. To the ancient mind, death was not abstract, but ever present. By acknowledging this, Samhain did not seek to banish death, but to make peace with it, to negotiate with unseen forces in the hope of survival. This was the cultural soil from which the idea of the thinning veil first grew. Over time, as tribes encountered invaders and new religions, Samhain transformed but never disappeared. The Romans, upon conquering Celtic lands, layered their own festivals over it. The Catholic Church later attempted to sanctify it, declaring All Saints' Day on the 1st of November and All Souls' Day on the 2nd. Yet the older traditions endured in whispers, preserved in villages and hearthside stories. Halloween, as we know it now, carries the faint echoes of these older rites, though their deeper meaning has largely been forgotten. Still, the persistence of these traditions hints at something more than superstition. Why did cultures far removed from Celtic Europe also recognize certain times of year as portals between worlds? Why did they all insist that the dead returned on specific nights, marked by the movement of stars and the cycle of the moon? Samhain may appear as just another seasonal festival, but within it lies a map of time itself, a calendar of the dead, guiding the living by shadows as much as by light. The notion that Samhain was simply a harvest celebration overlooks the way knowledge of it was actively suppressed and reshaped by forces of authority. In the early centuries of Christian expansion, missionaries arriving in Celtic lands quickly recognized the power that Samhain held over local communities. To convert the people fully, they could not ignore these rites. Instead, they worked to subsume them, weaving the holy days of the Church into the existing calendar. What was once a festival acknowledging the dead became blurred with the Catholic observances of All Saints and All Souls. The official narrative emphasized prayer for souls in purgatory, but beneath the surface, the original essence of the ritual remained. Historical accounts suggest that church leaders condemned practices like divination, spirit communication, and offerings to the dead as pagan superstition. Yet these same practices never disappeared. They moved underground, carried out in private, spoken about only in whispers. Manuscripts from the medieval period record stern warnings against attempts to summon spirits at Samhain, which ironically confirm that such attempts were indeed widespread. The fear was not only of heresy, but of what people might actually encounter if the veil was indeed thinning as believed. The suppression extended beyond religion. With the rise of state authority in later centuries, any form of festival that blurred the lines between the natural and supernatural became a threat to order. Fires on the hillsides, masked processions through villages, and rituals performed under the new moon carried the weight of rebellion. They resisted the control of both crown and church, preserving the memory of an older worldview where humans lived alongside spirits, not above them. Archaeological evidence provides tantalizing support for the antiquity of these beliefs. Burial mounds aligned with solar and lunar events suggest that the ancestors of the Celts had already marked certain nights as gateways long before recorded history. The discovery of carved stones depicting figures with animal masks, antlers, and torches points to ceremonies where transformation and disguise blurred the human form, echoing the costumes we see in Halloween today. The question arises, if these rites were so vigorously targeted for erasure, what knowledge was being protected? Was it simply to eliminate a rival belief system, or did the ruling powers fear the possibility that people truly could access realms beyond the physical on certain nights? The persistence of Samhain through centuries of suppression suggests that what was practiced carried a deeper truth, one too enduring to be erased by decree. Evidence for the hidden layers of Samhain and its transformation into Halloween is scattered across history like fragments of a broken mirror. Folklore offers one of the richest sources. In rural Ireland and Scotland, stories recorded by collectors in the 19th century describe Samhain as the night when fairies, ghosts, and otherworldly beings moved freely among the living. People spoke of the Aos, the hidden folk who could bless or curse, demanding respect through offerings left at crossroads or doorways. These tales were not dismissed as mere imagination. They were treated as living memory, a continuation of beliefs that stretched back to pre-Christian times. There are also persistent references to divination during Samhain. Young women in particular were said to peer into mirrors by candlelight, toss apple peels over their shoulders, or gaze into bowls of water to glimpse the faces of their future husbands. While these may sound like simple games, they reveal a serious undercurrent, the belief that time itself bent on this night, and the future could be momentarily revealed. Manuscripts from the 17th century condemn these practices as sorcery, yet their very prohibition indicates their widespread presence. Artifacts add further weight. Excavations at sites across Ireland have uncovered remnants of great bonfires, their ashes carefully spread on fields as if to sanctify the land. Animal bones charred in these fires suggest ritual sacrifice, not for sustenance alone, but for a spiritual exchange with forces unseen. In Scotland, carved stones depict figures with animal heads and masks, hinting at ceremonies of transformation where the boundary between human and spirit blurred. Such imagery foreshadows the masks and costumes still worn each October, though their origins lie in warding off entities rather than mere entertainment. Even the stars seem to play a role. Some researchers note that Samhain aligns with the rising of the Pleiades cluster, long associated with the dead in cultures as far apart as the Maya and the Maori. The recurrence of this celestial marker across civilizations suggests that Samhain was not a random date, but part of a global recognition of cosmic cycles tied to life, death, and rebirth. When pieced together, these fragments tell a story that mainstream history often sidesteps. Samhain was not an isolated superstition of Celtic tribes, but part of a broader framework of knowledge linking the earthly and the cosmic, the living and the dead. By studying folklore, ritual remains, and celestial alignments, a picture emerges of a night deliberately structured as a passageway, a hinge between two realities that authorities sought to deny, yet that ordinary people continued to honor. When we trace Samhain beyond the Celtic world, we begin to see patterns that are too precise to dismiss as coincidence. In Mexico, the Day of the Dead honors departed ancestors at the start of November, mirroring the timing of Samhain. Families build altars, light candles, and offer food and drink to welcome the spirits home. In China, the Ghost Festival, though falling in late summer, carries strikingly similar themes. Offerings are made to restless souls, so they do not bring misfortune. In ancient Rome, the festival of Lemuria honored the dead through rituals of appeasement, where black beans were tossed to drive away wandering spirits. The connection is not limited to festivals of the dead. Sacred calendars across the world mark transitional points in the year as gateways. Among the Maya, the cycles of time were linked to celestial events, with specific days dedicated to honoring ancestors and the unseen forces guiding fate. In Japan, the Festival of Obon celebrates ancestral spirits returning to the world of the living, with lanterns lit to guide them back. The recurring idea that certain nights thin the veil between dimensions suggests a shared awareness that life and death are not fixed states, but shifting conditions tied to cosmic rhythms. Symbols echo across continents as well. Masks, whether carved from wood in Africa, crafted from bone in Europe, or painted in ceremonial colours in the Americas, are central to rituals that blur the identity of the living with the realm of the spirit. Fire, too, appears universally, whether in Celtic bonfires, Roman torches, or Asian lanterns. Fire purifies, protects, and illuminates, but it also acts as a beacon to the other side. These elements point toward an ancient knowledge, encoded in ritual, that humanity once understood, and then scattered as empires rose and fell. Why would such patterns appear among cultures with no known contact? Some argue that this is the collective human response to the universal mystery of death. Others suggest a deeper connection, perhaps rooted in a forgotten civilization whose wisdom dispersed across the earth after a great cataclysm. Still others believe that the repetition of these practices points to direct communication with non-human intelligences, guiding different cultures towards similar rituals as a way of maintaining contact across dimensions. Whatever the explanation, the parallels make clear that Samhain is not an isolated tradition, but one echo of a vast network of knowledge. It is as though humanity has been trying to preserve fragments of a larger truth, a calendar of the dead written not only in myth and ritual, but in the very cycles of the cosmos. Mainstream historians often explain away these connections as coincidence, or as the natural product of humanity's shared fear of death. While that argument carries weight in academic circles, it does not fully address the precision of the timing, the recurrence of specific symbols, or the insistence across cultures that particular nights open gateways between realms. When questioned, institutions typically offer neat dismissals. They frame Samhain and similar observances as folk superstition, curiosities that entertained isolated rural communities but lacked deeper meaning. Yet when we examine the language used in these dismissals, a pattern of bias emerges. Textbooks speak of primitive beliefs, irrational fears, and quaint traditions. Such language reduces practices like Samhain to little more than cultural decoration. It avoids the uncomfortable possibility that ancient peoples may have been mapping forces we do not yet understand. Scholars who suggest otherwise often face ridicule, their careers jeopardized by association with topics labeled fringe or unscientific. Grants are rarely awarded for research into esoteric calendars or ritual astronomy, ensuring that such studies remain at the margins. The academic wall is not simply a refusal to believe. It is also a system of control. Knowledge that does not fit within established models of history is quarantined, left unexplored so it cannot disrupt the prevailing order. Consider the case of early folklorists who documented Samhain traditions in rural Ireland. Their work was quietly shelved for decades, dismissed as irrelevant to serious history. Only now, with renewed public interest, have some of those records resurfaced. Similarly, archaeological sites with possible ritual alignments are often classified under the vague category of ceremonial use, a phrase that acknowledges significance without permitting deeper interpretation. The suppression may not always be deliberate, but it is effective. By framing Samhain as myth rather than potential knowledge, institutions protect themselves from having to answer unresolvable questions. Could the veil between worlds truly thin at predictable times? Could rituals developed in antiquity have been designed to harness energies we no longer perceive? These questions threaten to blur the boundary between science and spirituality, between history and mystery. For that reason, they remain taboo in official narratives. But for those willing to look beyond sanctioned explanations, the persistence of Samhain across millennia hints that ancient people may have understood something vital. The academic wall may conceal it, but the fragments endure, in folklore, in ritual, and in the whispered sense that on certain nights, reality itself bends. Outside the walls of academia, other voices propose explanations that reach far beyond accepted history. Some researchers argue that Samhain is not merely symbolic, but evidence of advanced knowledge of cycles of energy that pulse through the Earth and cosmos. According to this view, the ancients recognized that on specific nights the barriers between dimensions weakened, allowing communication with other realms. The fires, masks, and offerings were not only rituals of survival, but techniques for interacting with unseen intelligences. One theory suggests that Samhain aligned with cosmic vibrations triggered by the position of the Pleiades, a star cluster linked to the dead in cultures from the Celts to the Maya. Proponents claim that at this time the Earth resonates differently, creating conditions for consciousness to cross thresholds. If true, then Samhain was a kind of technology, a ritual science for bridging worlds. Others take the idea further, suggesting that these alignments enabled communication with beings outside the human sphere, entities remembered as gods, ancestors, or spirits depending on cultural interpretation. Fringe researchers also point to evidence of ancient calendars that appear to track more than solar and lunar cycles. Some mark energetic fluctuations in the geomagnetic field, hinting at knowledge of forces only recently explored by modern science. Could it be that Samhain functioned as a key to unlock these cycles, placing human communities in harmony with cosmic energy flows? The idea challenges the narrative of primitive superstition, instead painting the ancients as guardians of a sophisticated but now fragmented system of knowledge. Another layer of speculation links Samhain with the concept of parallel dimensions. If existence is layered, with multiple realities coexisting invisibly, then times like Samhain might represent thinning points in the fabric of space-time. In these moments, the barriers blur, and beings from other dimensions slip through. This could explain the consistency of reports of spirits, apparitions, and supernatural encounters tied to late October and early November. To believers, these are not hallucinations, but glimpses into parallel worlds temporarily overlapping with our own. Skeptics dismiss such theories as fantasy, but their persistence reveals something deeper. People are drawn to the possibility that the rituals of Samhain preserved hidden truths about consciousness, energy, and the structure of reality itself. Whether through alignment with the stars, resonance with the earth, or contact with other dimensions, the festival may have encoded a knowledge too unsettling for modern institutions to embrace, yet too enduring for humanity to forget. If Samhain truly carried knowledge of gateways, energies, and dimensional thresholds, then its erasure from the official record was unlikely to be accidental. History provides many examples of how powerful institutions have controlled narratives, eliminating what threatened their authority. The burning of libraries, the destruction of pagan temples, and the demonization of local rituals all point to deliberate strategies of erasure. The suppression of Samhain fits within this broader pattern of cultural cleansing, where memory itself becomes a battlefield. The Catholic Church had strong motives to reshape Samhain. By overlaying it with All Saints and All Souls, the Church redirected the focus from personal communion with the dead to sanctioned prayer for souls under ecclesiastical authority. Independent ritual contact with ancestors represented a direct challenge to clerical power. If villagers believed they could access the spirit world without intermediaries, the role of priests weakened. Labeling these practices as witchcraft or sorcery turned them into crimes rather than traditions, pushing them into secrecy. Later political powers also had reasons to sever people from the old calendars. Empires sought uniformity, and ancient festivals tied to cycles of the land and stars encouraged loyalty to local identity rather than centralized rule. By stamping them out or reframing them, rulers secured obedience and reduced the influence of customs that fostered independence. Even in more recent centuries, authorities feared gatherings around bonfires or masked processions, which could mask rebellion as easily as ritual. Some researchers argue that suppression extended into the modern era through more subtle means. Folklore was collected, categorized, and stored away by scholars who framed it as relics of ignorance rather than living systems of knowledge. Archaeological sites with alignments to celestial events were explained away with neutral terms like ceremonial or ritual use, denying the possibility of advanced intentional design. Over time, the deeper meaning of Samhain was not just forgotten, but actively reframed into a child's holiday of costumes and candy. The question remains, was this only the natural process of cultural change, or was it erasure by design? When we look at the fate of other knowledge systems, the Hermetic texts, the Gnostic Gospels, the esoteric philosophies of ancient Egypt, we see the same pattern: destruction, suppression, and repackaging under new authority. If Samhain held a map of cycles that allowed direct access to the spirit world, then its erasure was more than religious or political. It was a way to control who could touch the hidden currents of time and death, and who could not. If the deeper meaning of Samhain truly was a key to understanding cycles of life, death, and cosmic energy, then the implications ripple far beyond folklore. It forces us to reconsider the nature of consciousness itself. If the veil between worlds does thin at certain times, then death is not an end but a passage, and the living are not cut off from the dead, but exist alongside them on parallel frequencies. This challenges the rigid materialist worldview that dominates science and philosophy today. It also reframes human destiny. Control over such knowledge would mean control over how people relate to life, mortality, and power. If ancestors could be consulted, if spirits could be contacted, then wisdom would not belong to the institutions that guard it, but to every individual who dared to participate in the ritual calendar. Samhain, in this light, becomes more than a seasonal festival. It is a statement of sovereignty, that every person has the capacity to commune with the unseen. There are implications for our understanding of time. Ancient calendars like Samhain suggest that time is not a straight line, but a series of recurring windows where the structure of reality shifts. If the ancients identified these windows, then they may have known that consciousness itself expands and contracts with the cycles of the cosmos. This could explain why people across cultures insisted that prophecy, divination, and contact with the other world were most effective on specific nights. Perhaps they were not imagining, but observing real phenomena that we have since forgotten how to measure. On a personal level, this knowledge would change the way we view death. Instead of finality, death becomes transformation. Instead of absence, the dead become accessible. Entire traditions of grief, ritual, and remembrance would shift if people embraced the idea that their ancestors truly walk among them during these nights. It would grant both comfort and responsibility, as the living would need to honor and respect those presences. On a societal level, the implications are even greater. If such knowledge were rediscovered, it could destabilize the systems built on the fear of death and the control of memory. Religions, governments, and even sciences would need to confront the possibility that reality is porous, that the dead are not gone, and that power rests not in institutions, but in cycles written into the stars and earth itself. Samhain, then, is not just about ghosts or costumes, but about the very foundations of human freedom and identity. The story of Samhain is the story of how humanity once stood at the threshold of two worlds and knew how to move between them. What began as a night of firelit rituals in Celtic hills has echoed across centuries, surviving conquest, suppression, and distortion. Its essence has lingered in the tales of ancestors returning home, in masked revelers warding off spirits, in calendars marking sacred alignments of stars. Stripped of its deeper meaning, it was repackaged as Halloween, a carnival of disguises and sweets. Yet beneath the surface, the ancient knowledge still whispers. If Samhain does mark a thinning of the veil, then every autumn we stand at a doorway that most no longer recognize. Some experience it in dreams, sensing presences that defy explanation. Others notice the uncanny stillness of the season, as though the world itself pauses. The persistence of these feelings suggests that something lingers, whether in human memory or in the very fabric of reality. Perhaps the calendar of the dead was never forgotten, only obscured, waiting for those willing to see. The truth of Samhain cannot be reduced to superstition, nor fully explained by academic theory. It sits in the space between, where folklore, archaeology, astronomy, and lived experience converge. The fires of old still burn in the stories told each October, in the lanterns carved to keep spirits at bay, and in the unshakable intuition that this time is different from all others. If we dare to look closely, we may find that Samhain was not only a ritual of survival, but a reminder that death is not an ending, only a turning of the wheel. The hidden calendar of the dead suggests that reality is layered, cyclical, and alive. To recognize it is to challenge the power structures that thrive on fear of the unknown. To honor it is to reconnect with forces that transcend time, guiding us toward a deeper understanding of who we are and what lies beyond. Whether we accept it as myth, memory, or map, Samhain endures as a testament to knowledge that refused to die, a reminder that the veil is thin and the door is never fully closed. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of the Occult Knowledge Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon. Subscribe now.